Today on CityCast Nashville, we're bringing back a conversation Grace Fuse had with Andrea Giordano, better known as BNA Cheap Flights on Instagram. Andrea is your go-to source for the hottest deals on flights to and from BNA. And believe it or not, it's already time to start thinking about those spring break trips and summer vacations. Whether you're looking for a quick beach trip for under $100 or a European flight for under $1,000, Andrea tells us how she finds these incredible deals and gives us her tips on how to be savvier travelers. It's Monday, January 6th. I'm Marie Cecile Anderson, and this is what Nashville's talking about.
This is specifically topical for me because actually this morning I was trying to book my flights to New Orleans for my family vacation. Is it possible to accurately anticipate how expensive flights are going to be? Is Google Flights just like yanking my chain? What's up with that? When do I book a flight to New Orleans?
This is a great question. This is like the $1,000 question. The best time to book it is when it drops. Which is
okay.
Which is like, you can't be predictive on these things. In general, I can give people kind of ideas of, start looking 3 or 4 months out. But for me, my advice is when it drops, you book. And then depending on the location, there are some that just won't drop. They're like tickets to South Africa, very steadily to Cape Town and Johannesburg. They stay right at 1,100. So they're, you can almost, I know it's almost
so specific.
It is, but there are some places that stay really steady. And then there are other places like New Orleans where they can jump up and down depending on like the marketing people at Southwest waking up and saying, we're below our numbers, we've got to run a sale. And that's just what happens.
Right. So there's a really wide range of how people find cheap flights. There are some folks who are looking for mistake fares and others are looking at last minute flights that aren't fully booked. And then there are the folks who are really taking advantage of credit card points and rewards. That's not what you do. You said you're looking at price drops. How do you pull off buying a last minute ticket?
Well, let me say this. I buy impulsively. Sometimes, like when it drops, when I see something amazing, like a couple weeks ago, I shared Alaska Airlines did a 1-day sale where they were doing BOGOs to anywhere they fly, which I know includes Hawaii as well. So I looked it up and ran it. And in the mid 200s, you could fly to Hawaii and back with someone with you. So, it totaled $500 for 2 people or somewhere around there. And there were about a dozen people who got their partners or whoever else together and said, we're going to Hawaii. And they booked these last minute tickets, and they were still 3 months out, 5 months out until they would fly. But they were just ready to book when a cheap flight drops.
I guess that means you have to be flexible on the day that you're actually going to fly there. Is that kind of the secret sauce here?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, my number one advice to people is that you book tickets before you book hotels. The biggest way people get stuck in expensive flights is they put in their PTO request and say, I'm going to be out these dates. And then they say, let's find a cute Airbnb. And so then their friends, and then they all book a cute Airbnb. And then they DM me 6 weeks beforehand and they say, help us, the tickets are $600. What do we do? And there's very little to do at that point. So my advice is book your flights first and let everything else follow.
So are you just scouring the internet for flights all day or how do you find them?
Not all day, but
genuinely.
like 3 times a day, 5 times a day, I'm going on Google Flights and I'm looking every single day to share it out on my account just because I can't fly everywhere that I want to go to, but I do want to share it with people so that they take the opportunity. One thing that is kind of different the way I share flights compared to others is, other people, they'll share flights even though they're not good. I mean, I get subscription emails and they're not good flights. And I don't blame them. The reason is they're not Nashville based. They're looking at the whole country. They've got a lot of customers across the entire nation. And so in general, when a flight drops across the US, they send out this email saying, hey, these dropped. Well, a lot of times they're not good for Nashville. They're great for Atlanta or Washington or wherever else, but not great for Nashville.
What does that mean? What does it mean to have a not good flight?
So sometimes an email will come in and say, tickets to Tokyo have just dropped. And you see that Boston is cheap. And New York is cheap, and DC is cheap, and LA is cheap. But when you put in Nashville, it says it's $1,200. And I know that's not a good flight. But they're trying to hit their whole audience, and they're banking on the fact that most people are around those hubs instead of some of the although we have a growing airport, it's a smaller airport compared to others.
Are there typical like dips in terms of holidays or something where people have sales? I know that people have Black Friday sales and stuff on flights, like Southwest might do that or something. Are those actually good sales? Is it a marketing tactic? When can we anticipate those dips?
Okay, there are some good sales and there are some that are just, they're saying they're good sales. I've not found that Black Friday is a great day for buying flights. It's great for shopping, but like I'm sure you've seen going around on the internet where people are showing like they put the Black Friday price up and it's really the same price underneath. I've found that with flights as well. Sometimes there are good ones around Labor Day with like Allegiant. We don't always know when they're coming though. So Southwest has a couple good sales that they run annually and they're around the same time of year, but you never know exactly when they're going to release it. So they do something called a companion pass where you book a flight during a certain window, which was actually just last week, during that certain window. And if you do that, the next time you fly, you get to bring someone for free with you.
Oh,
and
interesting.
That's during a certain window as well. It's kind of like getting 25% off, but it's pretty good.
Yeah.
With Alaska Airlines, they do the best sales, in my point of view, when they do their BOGOs. So when that buy one, get one happens, they do that about 3 times a year as well. And those are great because they fly so many cool destinations like Alaska and Hawaii.
Do you have any tips for flying on a relatively cheap airline?
Yes, I do all the time. I think cheap flights are for everyone. I don't think they're just for people who don't have any money. Like my parents are retirees and I'm always shooting them flights that are cheap on these cheap airlines. And, you know, they're in their 60s and 70s. It's not like they haven't earned comfort at this point. They have, but they just want adventure at this point in their lives. And so they will get on any kind of airline and go do it when I say like, hey, Alaska just went on sale.
That's sick.
So yeah, I fly on these cheap airlines all the time. I also fly all the major carriers as well. My tips are, number one is just pack light. If you want to fly cheap, you need to learn to pack light. The way I have to talk myself into it sometimes, right? Like the choice is, okay, are we going to bring 2 pairs of yoga pants or are we going to have a really nice meal when I'm there? Well, I'd rather have the nice meal when I'm there. They're also making really great luggage now that fits under seats that is bigger. I have this luggage that has detachable wheels that I like to use. So it's maximizing the space that I can use. And then also just like set your expectations. You know, we're no longer flying in the golden age of flight back in the 1970s where, you know, it was an experience. It's no longer like that. We now have taken on this more budget-minded model that came from Europe where tickets are now cheaper, but we don't have as many amenities. And if you set those expectations and tell yourself, like, I'm going to go spend $13 on a margarita on this flight, I'm just going to do it. Like, those expectations really set you up for success and happiness instead of just complaining about what, you know, is no longer there.
What's the farthest that you personally would fly on Spirit?
They go to South America. I'd go there.
You'd do anything. You would go anywhere? Wow.
I've flown worse airlines than Spirit. I mean,
I don't know. I'm 5'10". I struggle.
I'm 6'2".
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
Oh, my, okay. I mean, fair enough. Fair enough. Who am I? That's fair enough. How about internationally? What direct flights do we have access to internationally? And when we can't have a direct flight, what are the least annoying hubs to fly through?
Yes. Okay. This is a great question. So we have international flights. Oh, my favorite one is to Toronto, Canada. Last week or 2 weeks ago, $70-something round trip direct flight to Toronto, Canada, which by the way is a hub to go internationally, all kinds of places. The only direct flight we currently have to Europe is London Heathrow, which is an amazing one. It's on British Airways. I always share when those nonstops go down in price because when they go into the 500s, buy them right then. Because normally they hover in the 7, 8, 9 range, somewhere in there. There are rumors, and they have been in the press that the BNA is in talks actively with more than one other European hub. So they've mentioned places like Paris, please. I know.
please.
Please. Frankfurt, Germany, which is actually a really great hub. It's a huge airport. Reykjavik, Iceland, which is my number one choice. That's my number one country I've been to out of 37. And a few other places. So they're in talks. They're trying to get us another international one. And then, of course, we have Cancun.
Hello from the future. Marie here, chiming in to say that since the recording of this conversation last fall, BNA has added a few more international flights to the schedule. To start, Nashvillians will be able to fly direct to Reykjavik on Iceland Air. Plus, the first ever direct flight from BNA to Dublin starting in April, and will have several connections to multiple European destinations. And if you're headed west, a brand new route on Air Canada to Vancouver will offer connections to Japan and Korea. But if you're craving somewhere warm this year, Southwest is launching weekly flights to Los Cabos and Punta Cana starting in March, just in time for spring break.
Okay, so what are you personally watching for right now?
I'm always watching Europe because that's the number one place people are asking for. I'm always looking to Iceland because that's my favorite country to go to. I love looking for South America just because there's a couple places, like I want to go to Patagonia down there. What people are looking for is they're looking for fall break trips. I'm always sharing those out. But just like, what's a really fun weekend? I just shared a date flight.
Oh,
yeah, where you fly in the morning. It was $34 round trip to Boston. And like, what a great date, right? In the morning,
cute. A date. That's iconic.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
I mean, like, that's a great fifth date, right? So you just like together, you get on a plane.
Sure, Mr. Big. I haven't seen Sex in the City. I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, sorry.
I mean, listen, my husband and I did this like a few years ago. We went to Savannah, Georgia, and we went just for the day. So we flew in the morning, but we made it fun. Like, where are we getting coffee in the airport? Like, what snacks are we getting on the plane? Let's take turns who's going to sit by the window. And like, the whole journey is the fun part. Then you get there and you're maybe there for 6 or 7 hours and you just, grab an Uber and go see something you've never seen in Boston. And then you come home that evening. And we made a deal, like, if it ever gets delayed in the morning, more than like 90 minutes, we're not going. And it's worth the $30 risk,
I mean, you just said that the journey is part of the enjoyment here. I'm guessing that means you're not a nervous flyer.
So I never was, and I still am not.
I'm a very nervous flyer. I hit like one bump and I'm like internally freaking out, trying to be externally cool about it, but certainly not.
Yeah.
What is your favorite last minute trip that you've been on?
The one to Iceland I went on, it was $199 round trip.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. And I booked that one. I was feeding my daughter in the middle of the night. I had just had her a few weeks earlier. And so I'm doing one of those stereotypical things where the mom's up in the middle of the night and I'm just scrolling through my phone and I see these cheap tickets to Iceland and I freaked out. And the next morning I called all of my best friends. I called my mom, my sisters-in-law. I said, we're doing a girls trip. Let's go.
I respect that so much. I'm also the planner of my friend group.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to go to the beach?
Yes.
What weekend? In terms of cheap flights that we can take from BNA, do you have any recommendations for places that are cheap when you get there?
Internationally, if you go to Central America, that is a really great bang for your buck. Anywhere you get away from a resort, an all-inclusive anything, or just away from the hubs where you fly into, you can live for, I don't know, you can get a great hotel for 30 or 40 bucks a day down there, or a great Airbnb for 80 or something like that. Basically, the farther south you go in Europe, the cheaper it gets. So the farther north you are, it's more expensive. Southeast Asia is very affordable. Highly recommend that. The ticket to get there is expensive, but staying there and being there, so many people are digital nomads now. So it's a great place to go do that.
How early do you show up to the airport?
This is like a great question. BNA is so small. Let me say this. If I'm driving, I need 30 minutes to park because that's something they're still working out and figuring out. And I always leave a little extra time for the traffic because you just never know in Nashville when it just completely kind of implodes. However, I'm super happy arriving an hour ahead of time. If I were recommending to someone else, I'd say more time, but I like an hour.
Do you have pre-check and stuff?
Yeah.
I'm assuming yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm guessing since you pack light, well, actually, I have no idea. Since you like to pack light and since you have to pack light, do you wear jeans to the airport or are you a PJs to the airport girl?
Oh, I'm usually like elevated soft pants. Like I don't want jeans digging into me while I'm sitting on a long, especially if it's a long flight. If I'm flying internationally, it's yoga pants and whatever. But I usually, since I fly for work a lot, I have to look a little bit like in case I bump into a colleague, then that's a problem.
Okay, what is your favorite BNA restaurant?
Ooh, I love this one. I always get coffee at Barista Parlor. That's my go-to. It's down in the Sea Gates. My favorite food, Kitty Hawk is New Orleans. It's New Orleans fare. It's right next to Voodoo Donut, right off the Grand Lobby. I loved their sandwiches because it's like, if you don't want to pay like a full sit-down type place, but you want something kind of elevated, that's really good. The Pharmacy has a restaurant there for a good burger. I know they just got I want to say Hattie B's is there now. Like it just opened.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
And I think they have Prince's coming too.
Ooh,
They just want everybody. We've talked about this so much on the podcast. It's crazy. The idea of whether or not you want to have hot chicken before a flight. It's literally, it's probably come up a dozen times.
Okay, I have to say, I had killer hot chicken and waffles at Blake Shelton's place.
Oh,
killer.
Really?
And that's very heavy before a flight. I actually regretted it a little bit later, but it was so delicious. I loved it.
That is a crazy thing to say. So what got you into flight hacking or cheap flights?
I've always been interested. I don't know what it is. I have a bit of a math brain. And so I've always kind of gotten an adrenaline out of being like, guess what? I flew to this place for this price. And people go, what? And I love that. I also just love the gift of travel. I think giving the gift of travel to someone by just encouraging them to do it is it brings me so much joy. Someone wrote me the other day and said, I'm literally in Nice, France right now because of you. And I just thought there's no bigger compliment to me. I mean, starting this Instagram account came because I was telling my friends and family about cheap flights and they weren't as interested as I was. And I thought, I know there are people out there who care about this and want to go places.
Certainly.
And so that's why I kind of started it. And it's just been super fun.
I know you've got some other gigs. What do you do that you're able to travel so much?
Sure. So I have a full day job where I work for the U.S. government and go do training in their overseas missions. Yeah. And then also I run a business for English training. So it's called EnglishEveryday.com. And I do English training for people whose native language is not English.
I'm assuming these kind of all go hand in hand with overseas, international travel.
I mean, it goes hand in hand in the sense that it's just kind of core to who I am and core to my mission in life, which is to make connections around the world and bridge those gaps. But yeah, my day job is very interesting because I never thought I'd be working in government at all, but it gets me to those places and connecting with those people around the world. So that's what I love about it.
Was there a first trip that you went on where you were like, oh, I like to travel?
Yes, I had no interest in travel whatsoever. And when I was 15 years old, my best friend said, hey, my uncle lives in Mexico and my parents are thinking of sending me down there. Would you want to go with me? And they told my parents and my parents were like, yeah, cool. And the two of us, 14, 15-year-olds, flew by ourselves from Illinois, where I grew up, down to Mexico and just spent a week with her uncle, who we didn't even know. It was wildly fun. And I ate carne asada every single day and was using the Spanish that I had learned in high school and just kind of fell in love with this, what is this? This is so different than anything I'm used to.
Yeah, and sounds like the spontaneity has kind of been part of it for you forever.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you coming on. I will be in your DMs probably
Please do.
a couple times.
Yeah. Sounds great.
But thank you so much. This is really helpful.
All right. Thanks, Grace.
That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Nashville newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Toodles!